Post-war world and India. 19th chapter. The title of this lesson says that the position of India and the world after World War One and World War Two, especially World War Two. From 1939 to 1945 is the period of World War Two. So, what is the impact of Second World War on the world and especially on India? Let us know the impact of Second World War on different countries. That what we call aftermath of this World War II. Here is a figure 19.1. It is capital city of Poland, that is Warsaw. So what do you see here? There, this city of Warsaw, there 85% of buildings are destroyed. Look at this figure. It is the destruction happened to the city of Warsaw after the end of Second World War. So the impact of the Second World War different for different countries. It was worst impact on many of the European countries, especially Soviet Union, Poland, Yugoslavia. These are the countries which had lost 20% of its population. 20% of its population was murdered, killed because of the Second World War. This is a loss of people, human resources. In terms of economy, European countries heavily destructed. That is USSR, that is Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, in short USSR or Soviet Union, and other European countries lost very heavily. There was a heavy destruction of cities, factories, and mines on a large scale in these nations. 1700 towns, 31,000 factories, 70,000 villages. Moreover, 70,000 villages of Soviet Union had completely destroyed. It means there was a severe loss for Soviet Union after end of World War II. Whereas USA, that is United States of America, suffered less destruction when compared to the USSR, because World War II happened on European nations, Asian countries. This World War II have not occurred on USA. That means USA did not face a lot of destruction by World War II. Understand? Because Second World War was not happened on the territories of USA. Actually, Second World War supported and helped America to grow its economy from misery. Once again, America, which was passing through the Great Depression, recovered from Great Depression because of Second World War. Second World War helped America to come out from the Great Depression. Great Depression is a worldwide economic depression. So Great Depression, in the sense, it is a worldwide economic decline. World nations have passed through economic depression, that what we call Great Depression. Even America too suffered economically. Its economy was hit with the Great Depression. So there was no hope to recover from the Great Depression. Luckily, Second World War started. So the Second World War helped America to recover from the Great Depression. So that is the fact here. Second World War helped America to recover its economy misery which it got from Great Depression. And here, far from the threats of war, the industries and agriculture of America was actually prospered. Prospered in the sense well developed. Agriculture and industries were very good in development. And this prosperity in agriculture and industries helped America to give full employment and high productivity. During the Second World War time, many of the nations wanted weapons and other war related products. America, with well developed industries, started producing war related things required for world nations. So the Second World War needs are provided by the America. So at that time, America guaranteed full employment and high productivity. In March 1945, there at that time, Harry Truman, he was the president of a US, United States, that is America. So in March 1945, Truman, the president of US, he given a speech, and in his speech he stated that America emerged as a powerful nation in the world from Second World War. He stated that America as the most powerful nation throughout the history of the world, that is from World War II. That means, in his words, he clearly mentioned that America was a nation, but it turned to powerful nation of the world because of Second World War. This is the statement of Harry Truman, who was the president of US in 1945 after the end of Second World War. And here the war, Second World War, was very destructive than the World War One. Many of the atom bombs, nuclear weapons, and highly sophisticated weapons were used here. So that destroyed the economies of many nations. So the devastated countries by Second World War, they started rebuilding their economies. There, the world had seen some new developments after the Second World War. Three important changes happened after the end of Second World War. One is there one powerful international organization struggling for world peace was emerged. That is United Nations Organization. In short, UNO. UNO has UNO has been set up there. Okay. Today it is working for world peace from New York. Its headquarters is at New York. And the second one, Cold War also started after the World War II. What is Cold War? It is a war tension between two nations. It means that instead of a real war, a kind of war tension prevails in any of the nations is called Cold War. So Cold War started between two powerful nations. One is US, that is America, and second is Soviet Union. One side, Soviet Union wanted to establish its authority supremacy throughout the world. To encounter the expansion of Soviet Union, America too started in expanding its authority. So between these two powerful nations, there was a tension of war. So such a war tension between US and USSR termed here as Cold War. So Cold War started, which continued for a period of 45 years. It started in 1945 after the end of the Second World War and ended in 1991 with disintegration of USSR. So 45 years there was a Cold War between America and erstwhile Soviet Union. This also started. And third one, another important process started end of the Second World War, that is decolonization. What is decolonization here? Right? It is freedom from the colonial rule. Many of the Asia, Africa, and Latin American countries were passing through colonial rule and they wanted freedom here. So these powerful nations of the European continent, they were not able to control the colonies for a long period. So Asia, Africa, and Latin American countries struggling for freedom increased to a great extent. It means after the end of the Second World War, that is from 1950, second half of the 20th century, many of the Asia and African countries have got independence. There was a mass movement in many of the colonial nations for independence. That what we call a freedom struggle against colonial rule, that decolonization. So these were the three important process started after the end of Second World War. The Second World War started and fought for the principle of peace. It started to restore peace in the world. You know, the Second World War started between Axis powers and Allied nations. One side, Allied nations wanted to protect the freedom of many nations, which standing for democracy. Another side, Axis powers wanted to see their supremacy throughout the world, which believed in the ideology of Nazism and fascism. Especially Hitler of Germany believed in a Nazi ideology, and Benito Mussolini, the leader of Italy, believed in the ideology of fascism. They believed in an imperialistic idea. It means they wanted to expand the supremacy of their nation throughout the world. They wanted to conquer the world. They wanted to bring other nations under their control. And that what we call imperialism. Okay. So here, to protect the world from imperialistic and dictatorship ideas, their Second World War started for restoring the peace, democracy, and freedom of the nations. Okay, it is started for to restore the peace, democracy, and to give freedom of the nations. Whereas Nazi ideas stood up for dictatorship and imperialism. So, in all these, the first foremost task for restoring the peace, it is very essential to establish a global institution or organization which would ensure peace and development of all the nations, that is UNO. There, the victorious countries in the Second World War, they met and decided to open and create one international organization for restoring the peace and for the development of all the nations. And that idea led to establishing United Nations Organization. Which one? UNO, in short, United Nations Organization, which also called in short UN. UN or UNO or United Nations Organization. In 1945, okay, that is what you call in the month of October, okay, there United Nations Organization was created in the month of October. Okay, that is 24th October 1945. Okay, so here this organization is now working very effectively with its many agencies and other what to call organizations like FAO, no? That is Food Agriculture Organization, then WHO, World Health Organization, UNESCO, UNICEF, like these several agencies are working with UN. So here, the colonial powers, that is Britain and France, they could no longer justify their old colonial policies. They also had been politically and economically weakened in comparison to the USA. Harry Truman, the president of America, stated that America has emerged as the most powerful nation of the world from World War II. In World War One and World War II, European nations have suffered a great loss. Britain, France, which were very strong and powerful nations before to the World War II, they become weak. They have come to the second place. America, which was at the second place, it has come to the first place. In Second World War, Britain and France received a great loss and weakened. Politically, economically, they become weak. They were not able to control their colonial countries which were under their control. Understand? So Britain and France, they were not able to justify their old colonial policies for a long period. The time has come for the colonial nations to fight against this colonial master countries, Britain and France. So Britain and France, they politically became weaker, okay, when compared to the what you call America. Understand? So America, that was pressurizing these Britain and France to dismantle their old colonial system. America started giving force on Britain and France to declare independence to the what you call colonial countries instead, right? Because America wanted its personal interest, okay. So here, which gave the old colonial powers exclusive access to the colonies. See, most of the world under the control of Britain. Britain had set up a vast empire in the world. Many of the Asia African countries were under the colonial rule of Britain. And such a colonial policy of the Britain not helping for America, which at that time turned to a powerful nation that was not able to connect with many other countries which were under colonial rule. So America started pressurizing the what Britain and France to dismantle their world colonial system, right? And here USSR, Soviet Union, which suffered great loss with World War II. It recovered from the World War One and turned to very powerful nation. So America one side and another side USSR. Both the nations turned to very powerful nations. America and USSR. These two nations have turned to very powerful nations with different ideologies. USSR stood for communism, whereas America stood for capitalism. So there was ideological conflicts between USSR and America, right? So these two power blocks we call powerful nations, America and USSR, we call power blocks. So these two power blocks wanted to bring world nations under their control. So with their difference in ideologies, made the world into two groups. That is, one group of world countries moving on the line of America, and the rest of the countries moving on the line of USSR. So in this way, the world split into bipolar world. One pole with the USSR, its ideology, communism. Another pole, that is America, with its ideology, capitalism. So USSR and America, they emerged as two powerful nations after the end of the World War II. They wanted to control the world. USSR also emerged as a powerful nation, right? And this USSR also stood against anti-colonial rule. That means it wanted that colonies should get independence. Which one? That is USSR. Understand? USSR also wanted to get control on the countries which were under colonial rule of the Britain and France. So there was a demand from the what to call USSR also regarding what to call free from the what colonial rule. Understand? So USSR also what stood up against the what colonial policy, and it also demanded to end the colonial rule. So USSR turned to another powerful nation standing against anti-colonial rule. Okay, and many of the countries under colonial rule inspired by the USSR. So under these conditions, there from pressure from the America and pressure from the USSR, and moreover politically, economically, Britain and France, they become weak. So they did not have any other option to keep the colonies under their control for a further period. So they have only one choice, that is to grant freedom for the old colonies. So we find that here after 1950, many of the countries have got independence. That what we call decolonization. So Britain had no choice to keep many of the nations under its control for a long period. So it granted freedom to what their world colonies instead. So here we have already studied this what to call independence of the nations in the previous chapter. Understand? So in this